I'm an expert in trauma and anxiety. Like when it comes to my BIPOC, Latina, Latinx clients, like I talk trauma and anxiety all day long. But really, what was different this time was the trigger, which was money. Not everyone in grad school or a mental health therapist knows about that particular trigger or knows how to talk about that. But the impact or what it looks like and what it feels like in your body, those are the things I would definitely have no problem like calling out and saying, no, I am anxious right now.
Welcome back to the show. We all know that talking about money can be extremely awkward. And so I decided to invite Stephanie to talk with us about her money journey and also just continue to destigmatize the idea of, money is a taboo topic. There's so many people right now talking about money. And so I thought, Stephanie, I want to bring you to the show. So welcome. How are
Yeah,
you?
thanks so much for having me. I'm really good. I'm so excited to get to meet you. I've been following you for a minute, and trust me, I enjoy your content, and I'm glad we get to meet face to face finally. Yeah.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your journey. What was your relationship with money growing up, and what eventually led you to start Awkward Money?
Yeah, so my relationship with money growing up was you really didn't think about it. You just kinda had money, you didn't give it a second thought, really. It wasn't until maybe college I started to really understand, "Oh, wait, like, people actually start investing when they're, like, 10 years old, 18 years old, and here I am about to graduate and barely have a savings," you know? And although, like, me and my family, like, we came to this country, we were a little bit better compared to other families, but talking about money or this relationship with money thing wasn't really a thing. Then my relationship changed with everything finances when decided to become a mental health therapist. And I don't know if you're aware of this or the listeners out there, but when you're first starting out in the mental health field, you're not making any money. Like you're just not, you're barely thinking of savings or investing. You're just kind of barely getting a paycheck, let alone if it's livable, and you're just trying to make ends meet. So, really, when COVID hit and I needed to start my private practice, I needed to make some money moves. I needed to really get smart and dig deep and really start to understand like, why am I so stressed out over finances? It consumed me. My thoughts just wouldn't shut up about it. And it didn't really become an issue until I started having panic attacks over my bills. And I couldn't even share it with other folks because we were all in the same boat. So here I was, a mental health therapist, trained in everything anxiety, everything trauma, everything panic attacks, and I couldn't even talk about it with my other clients. And that's kind of what's spearheaded this whole idea of I really need to dig deep and learn what the hell is financial trauma and anxiety. And I started to go on my own healing journey when it came to finances.
Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing that. And first of all, like, what a vulnerable moment to share that you went through the anxiety and the fear, because a lot of people don't understand that it is a thing. And you talked about how you being a mental health therapist, I feel like there's also such a big pressure for those of you that work specifically in that field, because you're supposed to know how to manage all of these things, right? Like the expectation. And I think you even talk about this on your website, where you talk about how might feel like you're not living up to expectations.
Hmm.
So I just
Yeah.
thought that that was like a full circle moment for me when I was researching you, like, hey, let me learn a little bit about her. So at what moment did you realize that what you were experiencing wasn't quote unquote normal? And what are some of the steps that you decided to implement to help you with moving this conversation around how you were experiencing money trauma?
Yeah. So the big thing was I'm an expert in trauma and anxiety. Like when it comes to my BIPOC, Latina, Latinx clients, like I talk trauma and anxiety all day long. Really, what was different this time was the trigger, which was money. Not everyone in grad school or a mental health therapist knows about that particular trigger or knows how to talk about that. But the impact or what it looks like and what it feels like in your body, those are the things I would definitely have no problem like calling out and saying, no, I am anxious right now, or I am going through this mental loop of what I would call like trauma triggers or trauma responses. And the fact that it was coming from money, that was the thing that kept tripping me up. I'm like, it can't be money. There are all these other things I'm aware of that have these impacts or that would cause these behaviors, but money? What? What is that? Also, alongside this, during COVID, I was also reading up on all this research and all these articles about this concept called financial trauma. So it was up until just by happenstance or just by accident, I was actually doing my own research on, oh, this is what's going on with me. This is what's happening. And no wonder my clients don't think to bring this up because I'm not even asking the right questions. And whether it's my intake or what's happening when they're faced with the situation on finances.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what has been the most awkward money conversations that you had maybe with a family member or even with some of your clients without naming anybody?
Yeah. So I think the thing that a lot of people know about me is I'm awkward. Like no matter what where I am and no matter how I try to like hide it, it just comes out naturally. And over the last few years I've just kind of owned it, made it my whole brand in a way because it's a part of me. And it also helps me understand that if you're awkward or if you're uncomfortable, like we can talk about it. Like we can call that out. You don't have to be ashamed about it. So when talking to my family or friends, it's like, we're gonna get awkward, right? Like we're probably just gonna feel like we need to like not talk about this. And generally my advice has always been if something is feeling that uncomfortable, maybe we at some point need to talk about it. Most recently, me and my best friend, I've known her since college, we have no problem talking about like, hey, I'm kind of short 20 bucks. Can you spot me? But talking about our money goals or talking about like what we want from our relationship with money, that's been a new layer of our friendship. And that's been something that we're like just really trying to keep each other accountable for. And it's made our relationship much, much deeper because we're both just like, I don't know anything. And it's okay if you don't know everything about money.
Yeah, 100%. Bringing back the expectation part that you talk about it on your website, I feel like even for us as educators, and in your case as a mental health expert, there's also the expectation of I just need to get better at this, right? And for some
Hmm.
of us, and you're on the same boat as me, is like we're learning so much as we build. And what a beautiful moment that you are now having those conversations with your best friend about money goals, because yes, we can focus on the trauma, which of course is important to heal that part, but also at the same time we can navigate the conversation. How does money look like for someone who is experiencing or has been diagnosed? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think the thing that people need to recognize is a lot of folks, especially in the Latina community, a lot of us are walking around unrecognizing or without checking in that maybe we are neurodivergent or ADHD. A lot of us don't have consistent health care or access to mental health. So maybe we're undiagnosed, or maybe that thing that's telling you you're not perfect or you need to do better or this wasn't good enough, even though it probably was. You probably got like stellar grades or you had so much demand, but for some reason, this nagging voice makes you say like, it's not good. You need to start over or you need to go back to the drawing board and you feel tired all the time. You feel just so unease, like unrested or just so ready, like you're walking on eggshells all the time. We need to figure out like where that's really coming from. And if we need to start questioning, like, are we also dealing with a dysregulated nervous system? Because along with that, our community is also struggling with unresolved traumas and unresolved histories. And when you have a neurodivergent brain along with it, that could also lead to these money decisions that maybe look like they're erratic, maybe looks like they're impulsive. And that's just what is adding to the criticism and shame of this is why you're not good or this is why you're not catching up with others.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I have not worked with anybody who is neurodivergent, but I do know that there's people like you that work with folks that specifically identify as that, right? So I wanna talk about something that you said earlier on the podcast about how therapists struggle with even charging
Hmm.
for the services that you offer. Have you seen Have you seen a shift with your experience now that you know of money trauma, now that you know of the quote unquote like signs that come with knowing that, yes, I'm experiencing these? And have you been able to say, I really need to charge for the expertise that I have?
This is where it's kind of a go-to for a lot of therapists, but it really does come in handy. It depends. It really just depends. There is a growing number of folks who understand they do need to charge for what they're worth. We go to school, there is an expertise. Not everyone who calls themselves a mental health therapist offers what you can offer, so that's why you need to charge that. Your authenticity, your knowledge, all these wonderful things you bring, that's what people want to pay for. And you should be able to pay or get paid for a livable wage. But there is also another side of that coin where folks are like, but you're in this for the community. You know, you're not in this to get rich. You're coming off as a little salesy or a little too capitalistic. So you have to give away your services. And a lot of us do feel that guilt and that shame about maybe I should charge a little bit more. Maybe I should charge, $5, $10 more compared to last year. And a lot of us kind of go through this back and forth about it because we don't want to lose anyone. We don't want to be outpriced or have our clients make a hard decision of like, well, I'm sorry, I can't continue seeing you as my therapist. So a lot of us are trying to navigate those conversations day by day or just trying to see who can support us because the other side of it is mental health therapists are not trained as business owners. As a business owner, like you go in understanding this is what I offer, this is what I need to do to have my business be self-sufficient. But a lot of us don't have that training or that really core understanding.
Yeah, thank you so much for that transparency because I see this, by the way, as someone who also helps therapists with their business, like the business side of it as a business coach.
Hmm.
And I do see how the struggle to charge for the services, it's a real thing, right? And you talk about the guilt of how do we find the balance between our expertise and the balance on how we also want to serve our community. And I just want to remind everyone that is watching or listening is we also forget that we are the business owner and we have so much autonomy in the way we can charge and we should charge. And for the mental health space, you also have a podcast, and so that's also another way that you're
Hmm.
serving your clients by providing the free version of working with you. Obviously it's not personalized, but there's also resources that you can create for your community. Now, tell me about some of the money goals that you have now that we're going into a new year. What are some money
Hmm.
goals that you have, and what are the things that you're doing to make sure that you get there?
Yeah. So as much as I enjoy mental health field and what I've been able to do in the community. So my private practice is called Todos Therapy. I'm trying my best to expand my ADHD assessments and I want to get more of us properly assessed or at least get us on the right path of is it something like trauma or anxiety or depression or is it something else? I want our community to have those conversations with people they trust and if they need things like medication, I want to set them on the right path for them. With that, just educating people on ADHD and master's level clinicians like me. So I'm a marriage and family therapist clinician. I'm not a PhD, I'm not an MD, but I can still offer these assessments and I want to offer more education and more opportunities for that and get other therapists to get this training as well because it shouldn't just be me out here. It should be 20 other Stephanies out here doing this type of work. But the other side of that is I wanna expand my coaching business so that this is where awkward money comes into play. I think people get confused on, "So, Steph, like, why don't you just make this another arm or another branch of your private practice?" There are things I can do with my license, and there are things I cannot do with my license. Coaching gives me the opportunity to, one, not I'm forced to advertise that I'm credentialed or when it comes to marketing, I don't have to adhere to so many laws about it. And coaching offers a little bit more freedom, a little bit more independence. And I want to, again, educate folks on things like financial trauma and anxiety, which is not recognized by the mental health field. When you look at the DSM-5 or what we use for diagnosing, financial trauma is not in there. So with coaching, I can offer this education and not have my license be scrutinized as much.
Now, we love educating our listeners here on the show. So for people that are not familiar with ADHD, would you mind sharing like what is it And what are some of the things that can people kind of not necessarily self-diagnose, but actually create the awareness of like, wait, is that me?
Yeah. So I think the big thing is if your mind is always going, like there's always this conversation, there's always this little narrator, or the example I give is if your mind or your brain is an orchestra and you are like the conductor trying to instructs like the musicians, okay, bass come in, strings come in. For some reason, the bass or the strings don't want to listen. They're kind of doing their own thing. Maybe one person is distracted by the lights flickering in the corner. Maybe another person decided to go off script and play like their own DJ set somewhere else. And no matter what you do, you can't bring in all these different parts of you, all these different facades of you. And they're just not able to get to this one goal of let's make sure you can get out of bed. Let's make sure you eat on time. Let's make sure you send that email. Anything, any task or anything that you're trying to start or be consistent with, it feels like you're always stepping in cement. And even with this orchestra, there's like this audience behind you and they're expecting a show, like they're expecting you to do your job. But for some reason or another, and nothing to the conductor's training or intentions, it's just not coming together. And you can say like, well, I'm going to try a planner. I'm going to try and, set these goals for myself. No matter what tool or no matter what support you throw at it, it's just not quite enough to get the job done.
I love that you're talking about this because I think this is the beauty also of having your own business, because then you can also create frameworks or tools for people that struggle with ADHD. Like I'm thinking of a client long time ago that just having a Excel spreadsheet wasn't doing it for them for managing their money.
Hmm.
And so, do you personally use any tools that you want to share with us on how you manage your money?
Yeah. So for me, and I've tried every app out there. Like, by the way, for those who are curious about ADHD, if you've tried every productivity app that Google Store can offer, the Apple Store can offer, and it's just not sticking, might need to be curious, might need to ask some questions there. So for me, the thing that has always struck me about these apps, they just don't work for my brain. So I've kind of had to create my own system in Notion. And the thing that's worked for me is automation. If it takes me more than 5 steps to do something, I'm not going to be consistent and do it. Like if it requires me to look on too many different sources or too much information, I get overstimulated and I have to take breaks. I have to like walk away or I just don't return to it at all. So understanding that piece of it, that's where Notion and all these other apps that I use kind of help me be more flexible, but it also catches the information. So if I don't fill it out one day, at least somewhere in the system it can be captured and I can fill it in really quick and it kind of does the work for me.
I love that. I love that you have a system, and yeah, I'm big on automation. I'm not the person that will sit down and just the Excel doesn't work for me either, by the way. So you use Notion and I use Airtable, and that tool
Yes.
has been able to help me so much, but they're a little bit similar. Now, I want to bring it back about conversations around money, right? Like
Hmm.
we're starting a whole new year, and I just want to ask you, like, what are some of the basic money questions that people should be having at the beginning of the year with their partner, with their friends? Like just some basic, let's do this right now. That way, using your brand, like that way money conversations don't continue to be awkward moving into the new year.
Yeah. So the thing is like if your stance is or your goal is to not be awkward with money, cool. I am all about let's embrace the awkward because that's really what stops us or prevents us from being there. And we may never get to a point where the awkwardness goes away. But it doesn't mean you're bad at it. It doesn't mean you should, get to this point where you're like an expert and, you know everything about the numbers. It's just we're just going to sit there and even with the awkwardness, we can still do the thing. But my way that I approach it with my folks is what the hell is happening with your money? Like where's it going? What's the income? Can we just look at the numbers together? And then the next step is what system do you want into place to capture these numbers? If it's Excel sheet, cool. If it's pen and paper, cool. If it's like you and your partner or whoever you trust going over these numbers with, like, can we make that like a money date? Can we play music? Can we, regulate your nervous system? Can we get you to a place where maybe it doesn't look like budgeting, but it's more like financial self-care? You know, those are the things that we should be starting with for the new year. Because if you're just not used to doing this type of technique or task, yeah, it's going to feel not the greatest. It's going to be like, kind of boring or overwhelming. But even with that, maybe we can get you to a place where it's not like, oh, yeah, I get to do my budgeting. It's more like, okay, this is not the worst thing in the world. And I've done it. I've created this ritual or this routine where it's not the numbers itself that's bringing me joy, but it's all these other things that can make it
I love that. It sounds like an invitation to rethink the way we view money. So, Stephanie, what is your definition of wealth?
ooh, wealth. For me, it's changing. For the longest time, I used to think it was the number in your account. Like if it got to a place where you made $10,000 a month, like that was wealth. Or if you got to, go on vacations every year, that was wealth. I think really as I've gotten older, it's comfort. If I can walk into a room and know that I'm safe and secure and at least, no one's out to get me, no one's out here judging me, and even if they do, I'm comfortable. I'm walking on air, and I think wealth and money can be a part of that, but overall, it's internal, and everything else, like, is secondary to that.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming to the show. And for those of you that want to connect directly with Stephanie, check out the show notes. But her website is awkwardmoney.com. And I just love how you were able to introduce new concepts to the listeners. And of course, also educate us on some of the things that you offer. So thank you so much for coming to the show. And let's go ahead and build wealth juntas.
Yay.